Hey everybody, we got a great one for you today because Case and I are doing some exploring in the Colorado Rocky Mountains. Case, what's the trail we're doing today?
This is a trail that is called Moon and Gamble, right?
That's right, Moon and Gamble Gulches. And we got our brand new, to us at least, Land Rover Defender 90. So we're gonna get this thing aired down, get it out on the trail, and then have some fun, see what this Land Rover can do off-road, and see what this trail has to offer. So before we hit this unknown trail, we are airing down. In Case, what do you think of our 4-tire air down setup?
Dude, this makes it super easy. We didn't used to air down a ton because we have to film so many videos in a day and it takes a long time to air down, but that makes it pretty easy.
Yeah, man, this is by Thor's Lightning. It's a lightning fast air system. It's a 4-in-1 setup. Flip the lever, you got the screen. We're currently at 45 PSI, so we're gonna go down to about 20 and soften up this ride a little.
Yeah, and then when we air back up, we do all 4 at the same time and they end up at the same pressure.
Pretty cool system. People always ask me how I get those luscious curls.
How do you do it?
Curls by air pressure, Case.
It's because you off-road every single day, Tommy.
I wake up in the morning and I just grab some air out of my tires.
Yeah.
The good stuff right there.
That's your cologne too. Smell like the inside of a tire.
We call that BFG number 8 in 23.4.
Good enough.
That's good enough. We always test off-road at exactly 23.4 PSI.
Yeah.
Case, what do you think of our base spec Defender 90 here?
This is cool, and it doesn't really feel like a base spec. We've got quite a few options in here that make it pretty luxurious.
I know, heated steering wheel, heated seats, but then we've got the wheels from a grand piano and the little 4-cylinder engine.
And that's exactly what you want off-road because it's going to be light and we got more sidewall.
Heck yeah, so we got these tires nice and near down, these aftermarket BFG KO2s, and then let's talk about our different off-road modes. So we're gonna push this button here and then let's see what we got to play with. So we're in comfort right now, but we're gonna need something a little bit more extreme. Sand, probably not. Mud and ruts, probably not. Let's go right into that rock crawl setting.
Perfect.
And then we're gonna go into the low range as well. So into neutral here on the transmission selector, stick it in low. All right, there we go. Now Case, being that base model Defender 90, we don't have air suspension, we don't have that rear locker, we're missing some stuff that might help us off-road today, but we're gonna see what the base boy does when the going gets tough. Case, where are we at in the Rocky Mountains today?
Right now, we are just off Peak to Peak Highway. We're near a town called Rollinsville, so we're kind of out there in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, we're west of Boulder, about an hour, and this trail looks pretty cool. It's a blue trail on Onyx Off-Road. Now, this is a good example of why Onyx Off-Road is so rad, because this is a trail we've never done before. I haven't even heard of anyone running this trail in a long time, but folks have been running it. They've been posting on Onyx on what to expect. We've got some pictures, and it looks like a really rad little area. So we're gonna kind of truck our way along this trail. It's rated about a 5 out of 10, but some spots apparently get pretty gnarly. And use our promo code linked below for a discount on Onyx Off-Road.
Yeah, absolutely, because if you're doing what we're doing, going on an unfamiliar trail, especially one like this that's got a lot of crossroads and spots where you can potentially take a wrong turn, and if you don't know what you're getting into, like we don't, and how hard the obstacles are going to be, Onyx can give you a really good idea of what you're looking at.
Heck yeah, man. No, it's a life-saving tool. It genuinely is. Now, Case, are we insane for taking a Land Rover out by ourselves? Are we gonna make it home?
Well, we considered bringing a backup Land Rover in your LR3 because going out into the mountains with one Land Rover is bold, according to at least some people.
To the Toyota people.
Yeah, and we did have a Defender in the past that had this same powertrain, and it did let us down. It's not like it left us stranded, but it was not a good powertrain. So part of the reason that we bought this Defender is we want to see if this vehicle can kind of redeem itself.
So that one had that unsolvable misfire. This one's got 11,000 miles, and Toyota people say it's faked. Not a single check engine light. Not a single one.
Yeah, and a lot of people have been saying that this is probably sold after a year and 10 or 11,000 miles because it's got some issues. You and I are both of the mind that it's probably just a buyer that's got a fair bit of money and they like to cycle in and out cars, try something different every now and then, because we see that a lot.
Yeah, and this thing came out of Park City, Utah, or right near Park City,
Not
Utah.
a low-income area.
Not a low-income area, and had a ski rack on the roof. So I'm kind of thinking there's a good shot. Maybe this was like someone's ski rig, and they just got bored, so they bought a new one, or maybe they needed 4 doors. But so far, this trail's pretty cool. Got some nice little rocks here. We're gonna cut and then start the camera up again if we get to something more known.
Should we fly the drone?
Yeah, dude, let's do it. Let's talk about the trail and how this Land Rover is doing now. This is both of our first time on this trail, and this is pretty typical to what we find in Colorado. It's just been kind of a couple miles now of loose shale. So rocks maybe 4 to 10 inches in diameter and just spread out constantly across the path.
It's like we're driving through a rock quarry, so we're not really testing out the traction control system a whole lot yet. We're hoping we'll have more of those kind of features upcoming. But at the moment, we're getting a really good feel for how this coil suspension, which is unusual in these Defenders, because that means this is a more base spec. So rather than air suspension, we've got coils. We've got a really good idea now how the coil suspension does off-road.
Yeah, and look, it's an independent setup, 4-corner independent suspension. I think Case and I are both in agreement that it's pretty stiff.
Yeah. It's definitely intended more for on-road driving, which makes sense. That's the majority of what people are going to do with these vehicles. Even if you buy it with the intention to do some off-roading, 95, 98% of your driving is going to still be on-road. And there's actually a stat for how long it usually takes for Land Rover to actually end up off-road. How many owners?
Yeah, I think the rule is 7 years or 70,000 miles is the first time that, according to research, Land Rovers actually see dirt for the first time.
So something like the third owner is typically the first one that's actually going to take it off-road.
Yep.
So it makes sense that they're making these vehicles a little bit more on-road focused, but we're feeling that going up this trail, just getting jostled around a lot.
I mean, I think the saving grace here is we have these 18-inch wheels and this really thick sidewall.
Yep.
So we were able to air this puppy down, and that is making all the difference in the world right now, because as Case mentioned, it would be pretty poor. I mean, granted, this is an exceptionally bumpy trail.
It is.
There's just been no relenting from the constant rocks. And then the other thing that's impacting that ride quality is gonna be the short wheelbase. So the Defender comes in 90, 110, and 130 variants, and this is probably gonna have the worst ride off-road just because those wheels are close together.
Absolutely, but at the same time, because this vehicle is so compact, in other parts of the trail, it should be a little bit less of a handful than maybe the 130, which is a bit of a school bus, and the breakover on that is not going to be so good.
Now, another thing I'm noticing right off the bat is this 4-cylinder, when you pop it in a low range, has a really smooth power delivery. It doesn't feel peaky, it doesn't feel jerky at all, which I was really curious about, because I kind of think that the Jeep 2-liter turbo does feel a little peaky and a little jerky off-road. This is nice and smooth. We're not getting any turbo lags or whistles or any kind of weirdness out of the turbo. It just behaves like any other naturally aspirated engine. Man, this is what makes Colorado such a special place, is we have hundreds of miles of BLM trail, Bureau of Land Management trails, that are just open and free for the public to use. And that's a pretty unique thing. Like, you're not going to find that in Texas.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of other places, and even outside of the US, where most land is not really free for you to just get in your 4x4 and go drive around and have an adventure. But the fact that we can come out to a beautiful place like this,
and that's why, in my opinion, this SUV class has exploded, right? With the popularity of the Broncos and the 4Runners and the new Land Cruiser, is because these vehicles allow you straight out of the box to come out and explore and experience something that not a lot of people in the world have access to. The problem with Colorado, as amazing as it is you get maybe 3-4 months of access to these lands.
yeah.
And you can legally access them in the winter, but there's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 foot snow drifts through here, and you know, this kind of becomes inaccessible from October through June in some cases.
Yeah.
So you've got July, August, September, maybe part of October, and then you're back in a snow season. All right, so we found this cool little offshoot of the trail we were on. And let's check out and see what this has to offer. So we got a nice little test here of ground clearance. And we have about 9 inches in this Defender without the air springs. Let's see if we can clear it. But the good thing is we have that super short wheelbase.
Golden.
And you can see we were able to just crawl that like it was nothing. All right, now this is going to be interesting. This is a pretty severe little climb here. And I'm curious to see if the Defender can do it with the clearance that we have, because it is super rutted out and probably a 25-30 degree angle. So we got that traction control working already in the rock mode. Let's make sure. There we go, rock crawl engaged. Pretty serious hill climb here. Those KO2s are gripping nicely. You can hear that ABS pump working to kind of get us where we need to go. It's gripping, it's gripping. Oh. That's scraping on the underside now. So what we're seeing here is we're just high centered, so I didn't quite have the clearance to make it through.
Yeah, it got beached pretty good.
Oh, nice sound of rocks crunching on the underside. Now we do have a little bit of skid plating over like the oil pan and the fuel tank, but it's not that extensive. That's one thing I do want to address on this Land Rover. Oop, that's high centered almost, but we cleared it. Oh boy. Let's see what we got over here. Not a ton of articulation, but enough. One of the things about this Defender 90 which we're noticing is, yes, it is quite short, but it's still pretty wide. These are big cars now. These are not the small Defenders of the old days. I really like this thing. I think it's really cool. I'm a little bit of a contrarian sometimes, but this is a genuinely good little rig. It's not a rock crawler per se, but it does a good job of faking one. And this only has the center locking differential. This does not have the rear locker. And I keep telling this to people and they just don't believe me. But the Land Rover, the JLR four-wheel drive system is good enough to the point where it'll simulate a locker well enough to get you through anything you'd want to bring your $50,000 Land Rover through. And it changes a lot based on the modes. I think a lot of new vehicles that have these modes are just kind of marketing, but in this Land Rover it has a huge impact on the vehicle performance when you go from sand to rock crawl to whatever you may have programmed in. Alright, here I'm going to try to do this little trench crossing. Maybe we'll get a good sense of how this four-wheel drive system works. So we're gonna get really off kilter here, and this is where on any other vehicle you would need a locking diff, but this Land Rover, I just creep onto that throttle. It's gonna lift up that left front tire, and it's gonna engage the brakes so seamlessly we were able to just walk ourselves out of it. Pretty good case.
That is impressive with no rear locker.
No rear locker, and yeah, the rear locker would make that even smoother, but you don't really need it. Let's take a quick look at this Defender 90 and see exactly what we bought. Now, Case, this Land Rover went on sale about 4 years ago. What do you think of the design of the new Defender?
I think it's aging pretty well. It looks modern, but it's still got some rugged bits like this little bit of plating here on the sides of the hood that I like you call burger plating, because these almost look like patties between some buns. But it's got a couple slightly rugged elements, especially with the wheels that are on this one. These 18s look really sharp. And we were just talking about off camera, those little wheel covers over the lugs that say Land Rover. That to me looks like something that Land Rover would have done in the 90s. Kind of retro in a fun way.
They were onto some good stuff with this new design. One of the things I know my dad really wants to get, they're like $5,500, but the hidden Land Rover like factory winch install, has this A-frame that kind of goes along the front, and then the winch is built into the front end. It's a really clean looking setup. Now, the Land Rover Defender can be had in a huge number of options, which is one of the things that makes this vehicle kind of cool, is they're all a little different. This is the basic headlight, still in LED, and they are so bright. I've actually been noticing driving around at night, folks are flashing you with your low beams on, that's how bright they are. So I'm not sure I'd want to upgrade to the nicer ones. Case talked about the white wheels, which look fantastic. And then one thing we've also noticed from driving this around now for the last week or two are the doors are huge.
It is funny to see just how big the door is, especially relative to how little vehicle there is behind the door. So it's like two gigantic doors between two wheels, and that's the whole vehicle.
Absolutely massive. And then I like the way they've incorporated this window, super flush design against the B-pillar. And then you've got those little Alpine lights or safari windows, depending on what you call them.
And then you've got your full-size spare on the rear, and it's a swing gate, which is always fun, kind of old school. And then your dad got this old school style Land Rover spare tire cover with the Rhino on it. Back in the day, depending on which tire cover you got, they would just have different animals on it, which is pretty fun.
One thing which I'm a little disappointed in is not all Defenders come with the recovery points, which should, in my opinion, be 100% factory in a vehicle that's capable. So we've got the tow pack on this one, so we just got our little screw pin bow shackle case.
Screw pin bow shackle, that's a technical name.
Howdy. And then I think overall the interior is really pretty rugged. We talked about, you know, seats are comfortable and we do have power seats, but like we still have rubber floors, so it's nice to get dirty. The big disadvantage with this vehicle is getting into the rear seat, right? Because you got to push this button and wait forever.
Yeah, which somebody was telling us is apparently not the case now. I guess you can get the seat out of the way more quickly. We haven't tested the newest year
25 Defender 90? No.
So
this was a 23 model year. Now the sticker on this Defender, brand new, 63,000. We paid about 54,000 with 10,000 miles. A little bit on the high end. I think this thing's probably worth closer to 49, maybe 50 grand. But that's kind of, you know, dealer pricing for you.
yeah, and if you're looking for a Defender 90, you don't have a boatload of options. These probably, I would imagine, just looking at what traffic is around, sell the least between the Defender 130, 110 and this 90.
And I think what we find now is that these are going to be the cheapest of the three because they don't work for families. But in 30, 40 years time, I think these are going to be the most collectible because you just don't see them, right? And they're kind of that iconic two-door look, which is cool.
Yeah.
So engine in this one, we talked about it a little bit, but that's a 4-cylinder turbo. It is a longitudinal setup with a proper low range and a proper transfer case and a proper four-wheel drive system, right around 300 horsepower. Do you think it's enough oomph, Case?
For the size of the vehicle, I think it's fine. You're not going to win any drag races, but you can also get these with an inline 6, or if you're really cool, even on the two-door version, you can get it with a V8, which is pretty badass.
It's crazy, yeah. And they've got that supercharged V8, which has been around forever. And now they're switching on like the new Octa to the BMW twin turbo V8, 626 horsepower, I think, which is just mental. But honestly, even though that Octa is marketed as the off-roader of the bunch at $158,000. This is still the one I would take on an off-road adventure because that Octa's got 20 or 22-inch wheels. It's got a lot of fancy bits on it. This is the one that's more intended for what we're doing today. This is one of the coolest things about Colorado. Now we're on this Moon and Gamble Gulches trail right now, and you can see it's about 7 miles. Got some switchbacks here, but there's all these little intersecting roads that connect Moon and Gamble to a whole network of other trails outside of Denver, Colorado. So check this out, Case. We got Apex Road here, Yankee Hill Road, one of the most iconic trails in this area, Kingston Peak, which Andre and my dad just ran, and the Bronco. St. Mary's is a really cool spot as well, and this is all in the same little spot.
Yeah, it's crazy how many trails there are that are cut into here. It's, yeah, like you said, old mining roads, and they still exist and you can still come drive them today, which is pretty cool.
So all these cities, St. Mary's, Blackhawk, at the turn of the century, this was a huge silver mining area, and these roads were just ways to connect mines to processing centers and other mines, and now it creates a huge spaghetti of trails that are open to the public. They can get pretty easy to get lost though, so that's why it's nice to have a navigation thing here so we can kind of see. So if we wanted to, we're on Moon and Gambles right now, we could take this over to Apex, and then we could take Apex over to Kingston Peak, and then we could take Kingston Peak down into Black Hawk and drive home that way.
Yeah, you could drive off-road all day on these trails.
Yeah, hundreds of miles. We took Moon and Gamble Gulches down to Apex Road, which is kind of a rutted out, rocky dirt road. And Case, how would you sum up the performance of the Defender?
Pretty good. We had that one climb that it wasn't able to get up because it just got kind of beached. So I think our limiting factor is a combination of traction and clearance. This not having air suspension, like we mentioned, it's just only so much that it can drive over on these coils in a fixed height. But overall, pretty good. Yeah, like we were saying, it's a little stiff, but otherwise really impressive traction control system.
And this is exactly the kind of terrain I think that the Defender is meant for. Yes, you can take it rock crawling. Yes, you can take it desert running. It's not going to be particularly well sorted for either of those terrains. This kind of really rutted out 2-track mile trail, like a 5, 6 out of 10 is where this vehicle shines, right? Enough where, you know, yeah, it's got some skid plates and you could be scraping every now and then, but you're not constantly like bashing the underside.
I think if you're trying to turn this into a Wrangler or a Bronco competitor, you're fighting an uphill battle. I think both of those are just turnkey, easier to eke out more crawling performance from, but that being said, you can still do some pretty impressive things with this vehicle, a lot more than what most people do with them from factory.
100%. Yeah, it's the four-wheel drive system is the highlight of this vehicle for sure. Next up for me is going to be the visibility. You have that command driving position, as Land Rover calls it, where you've got really big windows and a great view of the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think the highlight of this one for me too is just that wheelbase is so small. You're able to kind of maneuver through some obstacles, even though it's wide, that you typically wouldn't on a 130 Defender or even a 110.
Oh, it's made things super easy. And look at that, Tom. You're starting to get some leaves changing.
Oh, gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful. I mean, I think the downsides, Case, here are the height, like you mentioned, right?
Yeah, only so much clearance.
Is a little bit of a problem. The ride's a little stiffer than I would like. We're aired down to 23.4 PSI. That's a must when you're off-road. Look at the trees.
I know, it's starting to happen. That's crazy.
It's beautiful, but it's also sad because it means it's the end of the summer here in Colorado.
Yeah, which means a lot of our off-roading is going to stop pretty soon. We can still do a little bit of snow wheeling. There are some trails that stay open, but some of these really pretty mountain trails are going to start to close soon.
Yeah, that's a real bummer. But look, folks, I think on-road, this is far better than a Bronco or a Wrangler. I think it's on par with the Land Cruiser. It just feels a lot nicer here than the Land Cruiser. And if you're willing to, you know, get it dirty and take it off-road, it's pretty good.
Yeah, there's really a lot that it can do.
Yeah, it really is a decent little four-wheel drive. I'm pretty impressed. Well, folks, thank you so much for watching this video. Case, I think we had a great day at the office today.
Oh, yeah.
We got that Moon and Gamble Gulches in the books, rated a 5. I think, you know, any stock 4Runner, Wrangler, Bronco, any of that's going to be fine on it. And then Apex Road's a beautiful scenic way. If you've got a crossover, you can come up here, you know, check it out, do some fun mild off-roading, and have a great afternoon.
Absolutely, and that's all for this video. Feel free to drop us a comment down below. Tell us what you think of our little Defender, and we'll see you in the next video.
All right, ciao, guys.